Dragging the stool over to the door, reaching up for the handle, Sarah rose on her tiptoes as she stretched her body even higher to reach the knob. Feeling it turn in her hand, she pulled with all her strength to open the door far enough for her little fingers to slide in between the frame and the door. Luckily for Sarah, people didn't lock their houses, so she didn't have to think about how to unlock the door. Hello, welcome to In My Words. The book I am reading from is titled The Monster We Call Dad by D.A. Riles. This book is not intended for young readers. After each reading session, I will briefly give information about a chosen plant. I hope through my words you will gain insight, knowledge, and a deeper appreciation and understanding of this mysterious and intricate world. Though the road may be long and hard, compassion and beauty can be gained through the enjoyment of nature and experiencing its wondrous gifts. Thank you for joining me. Chapter 7, A Walk to Grandpa. Sarah's life started out all right, but as she grew, things began to change for her. At the young age of 9 months, she started walking. At 14 months old, she walked all by herself to Grandpa and Grandma Nye's house. It was early morning. All were asleep in this fragile household, except for Sarah. Sarah was a hyperactive child, even at her young age, and had a very hard time being still and listening to what Dad had to say to her. Her mind was sharp and her little feet quick. Seeing Grandpa Nye working in his yard from her crib, Sarah's little arms reached out for him, as her sleepy mind was beginning to awaken. Tiny upturned hands grasped the air as if to summon him to her. Rays of sun shone through Sarah's small curtainless window as the light of day awoke her. Her crib near the single-pane glass window gave the deception of warmth as the March sun touched her face. The small one-piece pajamas with feet covered her body, but did little to help aid with her warmth. Climbing out of her crib and onto the cold wooden floor, Sarah felt hunger give its gnawing pang. Everyone else was asleep as the little girl continued to her destination. Not knowing that it was only 30 degrees outside and a light snow had fallen last night, Sarah wanted to be with her grandparents. She didn't know it was 2 blocks away, for what was distance to a child, when she could see the person she wanted just out of reach. Taking her steps with great care as she crossed into the hallway, Sarah saw her next obstacle, the steep wooden staircase. Fortunately, a month ago she had learned how to navigate them. Toddling precariously to the edge of the long staircase, Sarah sat down. Little grunts of determination passed over her lips as she began to turn her small body around. Tummy touching the steps, little feet bracing for an upcoming peril, she slid down the flight of stairs. Feet first, hands above her head, sliding on her tummy all the way down. Her little fingers gripped the steps to slow her descent as she went further down. "Ooh," was the small sound that came from her throat as she finally touched the bottom. Pushing off the steps with her hands, butt in the air making an upside-down V, Sarah righted herself and turned around, toddling over to the front door. Each step had a little wobble in it. Sarah felt anticipation, knowing she was getting closer to her unsuspecting grandpa, who was working outside of his home. The small child felt proud for being able to overcome so many obstacles. Nearing the front door, Sarah grabbed the 3-legged little wooden stool that was pushed up against the wall. Dragging the stool over to the door, reaching up for the handle, Sarah rose on her tiptoes as she stretched her body even higher to reach the knob. Feeling it turn in her hand, she pulled with all her strength to open the door far enough for her little fingers to slide in between the frame and the door. Luckily for Sarah, people didn't lock their houses, so she didn't have to think about how to unlock the door. Now it was time for her to move the stool. Squatting down as children do, she fell to her butt, the cushioning of her cloth diaper helping to ease the hard landing. Scooting off the stool, she moved it out of the way. Standing before the slightly open door, she wiggled her body through the opening, making it become wide enough for her small body to pass through. Ah! A cold wind whipped at Sarah's face as she left the house, causing her to gasp. Her little body began to tremble from the cold, as the snow-covered ground beneath her feet crunched lightly as she toddled along. Seeing Grandpa in the distance helped urge her on. She was determined to reach him, knowing she would get comfort, love, and food from him and Grandma. Walking the 2 blocks to her grandparents' house took several minutes, yet Sarah won't give up. Little puffs of breath followed in her wake as she continued her journey. Icy winds nipped at her tiny toes as they felt the sting of winter. The cold pierced into her skin. Tingling fingers and hands exposed to the frigid air also began to feel the effects of the weather as her pink little hands took on a purple hue. But nothing would stop her as she trudged on. Approaching Grandpa, she saw him squat down. Small plumes of snow fluffed up as her tiny cloth-covered feet went over the hardened ground. Going as fast as her little legs could carry her, she toddled quickly the last few feet to his safety, nearly stumbling as she did. Herman's back was turned, so he didn't know that his little granddaughter was coming up from behind him. Flinging her arms around Grandpa's neck as tightly as she could, coyly she smiled, saying, "I'm hungry, Grandpa." Herman was startled but didn't show it. Turning carefully around, he scooped the cold child up into his arms. Smiling sweetly and rising to his feet, he replied, "Your little hands are ice cold." He squeezed them gently between his hands, trying to warm her tiny fingers as he began to walk toward the door of his home. "Now, how did you get all the way over here by yourself?" Grandpa asked his little granddaughter as he swiftly came upon his home. Giggling, Sarah gave a little smile and shook her head, as if to say, "I'm not going to tell." Grabbing the handle of the door and entering the warmth of the house, Grandpa said with an affectionate smile, "We'll get Grandma something to fix you nice and warm to eat." Sarah squealed with delight as she saw Grandpa's smile broaden. It warmed her heart and body. She felt so good when she was with him. She felt safe. She felt loved. Today's highlighted plant is the Christmas cactus. Christmas cactuses are slow growing. They are a very long-lived plant that can live from generation to generation. The flowers can be red, orange, pink, purple, or white. The flowers can also take on a different color depending on the pH of your soil. The flowers have an almost graceful wing-like appearance. The Christmas cactus blooms at the beginning of November to the beginning of January. Christmas cactuses are possibly the most easy indoor plant to grow. They are easy to care for. They require very little attention, and this plant needs very little watering. It prefers bright light and not direct sun. If it receives too much sun, the leaves will become dry and brittle and then turn brown and fall off of the plant. My Christmas cactus is in a west window. If you choose to put your plant in a south-facing window, it would be advisable to have it somehow shaded, whether it be by another plant or by having a light shade over your window. The Christmas cactus grows well in 60 to 70 degrees. My plant has had it all the way down to 45, but it is not recommended, especially for any extended period of time. The leaves are flat and pointed at the ends. It doesn't grow very tall, but it does grow wide. It's very nice to have a flowering plant growing in the house in the winter, especially during the winter months when there is so much less sunlight. Please like, share, and subscribe. Next week, I will highlight another plant and continue reading. If you would like to follow along with this reading, you may pick up the book titled The Monster We Call Dad by D.A. Riles at Amazon.com. I look forward to having you join me next week.